want to say sorry to all of you who experienced problems with Sutra today. We know that there were technical problems, things disappeared. It's also been a day of technical problems here. So we are just surfing with that today. But we've heard from the team that they are busy sorting it all out. So I'm glad that you all made it. Maybe we have more still joining. Welcome again, Ben and Babette. Also, thank you for coming back. And thank you for all of your comments coming in the chat about your questions in love. We saw many deep themes there. What is love? What's the difference between love? Is it wisdom? How to be open? How to stay open? How not to be a victim? Many important themes that hopefully we will touch in the course of the next 5 sessions we have together. And today, as you see, it's me here. I'm Ruth, also a member of the online team. And today, behind the computer is Uri, who was sitting here yesterday. So if you have any technical problems during the session, you can write to Uri, and hopefully you can see him somewhere on there. You see he's holding his hand up, he's got his camera on, he's waving. Uri online team, great. I see some of you see him. Okay, and I just asked one technical thing. Yuval, could you come and just take away this thing that's on our screen? Thank you. This is Yuval, who's helping with our technical support, recording and manning the cameras for us. Great, thank you. And as we said yesterday, you have the features on Zoom to help make this meeting easier. You can use the reactions to tell us to slow down, to say when you like something. And also you can use the captions. So yesterday we said you should see them at the bottom, captions, hide, show. If you don't see them, look on the 3 dots, and then you should be able to turn them on if you want to see captions. Okay. And now I would like to also welcome us in on a heart level and a body level. It's been a moving day for us. We just come from a ceremony for our friend Mena, who Uri mentioned yesterday, our friend who passed away recently. And we were at a ceremony on her land to bury her ashes. So I would like to open with lighting a candle for her, and also for all of the people who have passed over, who have touched our lives. So I would light the candle now and invite you to go off into the cosmos, and you can close your eyes, you can feel into this prayer space in a way that's meaningful for you. And then in a few minutes, I will welcome us back to our bodies with a guided meditation. Wherever you are now in your prayer, I invite you to feel yourself out in the cosmos, in the blackness of space. Maybe you can see stars around you. And now we will slowly begin to come back to our earth, and we can see it below us, blue and green like a jewel. And as you notice it, you feel a pull towards it, and you begin to drift back towards the earth very gently. And as you begin to enter the atmosphere, you can see the continent where your body is. And descending down through space, maybe you start to see the countries around. Perhaps now you can see the landscape. Maybe it's light, maybe it's morning time, maybe it's night time. And gradually you come to the region where your body is. And as you come closer, you see the land where your body is, the building even that it's sitting in. Now you can float towards the roof, have a look inside the room and see your body sitting there. Notice what's around. And then ever so gently, you can approach your body and feel the moment when you can slip back into your physical body. When you're back in, you can take a few deep breaths, wiggle your toes and your fingers. Do what you need to feel like you've arrived back. Then when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Have a look around. Have a look to the screen, see who we are today. Thank you. So, we will begin with inviting more questions from you. We know you already wrote some questions. These were more to feel into what are the themes you are working with. And now we would ask you to write questions that are specifically for this webinar about paths from collective trauma to forgiveness. And then from this pool of questions today, Uri will select a few that we will invite Benjamin and Babette to answer. Babette, Sabine. But before we do so, we would begin just to work our way into the topic, and then we will start with the questions in a moment. So it's a big topic. We open on the second day, collective trauma. Yesterday, we were talking about community building. We were talking about trust. We also spoke about why we mistrust and what a block this is to building community, and also I would say to healing love. So I wonder if you would like to open with some, where does it lead you, this question? What are paths from collective trauma to forgiveness?
Thank you and welcome back. And for me, the line to the collective trauma and to the community building we spoke about yesterday, for me, this is really very connected. And I felt already after the webinar yesterday that it's interesting that we are here now connected via internet, And I don't know at all the background from where you are coming, how much you have information about our geistic line. And there we are already on this tricky point where we know that sometimes only a word can trigger in someone thinks because of our education, because of the past where we are coming from. And looking to the question, what is collective trauma? For me, this is very important to make the difference between a personal trauma, and I think we all face personal trauma, but on the other side, we all are as humanity in a collective history where we all face a history of war since thousands of years. And there I feel, if I look, what is the deepest trauma I am aware of, then I feel that we all have a history where we once were driven out from our home, where imperial thinking, patriarchal thinking took over, where the moment where domination over others were the key. And I feel that there is a memory where we all know that we felt home, that we felt trust, that we felt protected. And this tribal wisdom, I call it, this community wisdom, is heard in all of us. And this, I feel, is the core of our collective trauma. And some of us are much more coming from a history of, I would say, the perpetrator history. For example, me, I'm born in Germany. And when I was very young, I heard the first time about the Second World War, and asking myself, how could this happen? This was not at all in my heart of a child to understand this kind of history. And there is nothing where you can really be proud of a collective community where you say, wow, my ancestors. You have the memory of a lot of perpetrator, even that maybe in your own family, this was not the case, but as an entity. And others are much more coming from this point of being driven out for centuries. And there we have this perpetrator-victim pattern where we all together have to find the way out. And this I would name as the common line for how can we solve the collective trauma, how can we face the situation and really find reconciliation. And the issue of today is collective trauma and forgiveness. And I can say, before I can ask about forgiveness, I first have to face what is the trauma about? And then also, do I see any possibility of healing? And by facing the possibility of healing on a personal level and on a collective level, then forgiveness can enter the heart. But first I have to recognize where is the pain and where is also something where I am, for example, a perpetrator without knowing it and wanting to know it. So I have to know to what do I have to do forgiveness. Before, the word forgiveness does not really make sense for me. But then it's really important to discover that in the universe, I feel forgiveness is always, always, in every moment there, if we are ready to take it, to take the power of the universe, ready for forgiveness. So I try to find a line for the whole. Yeah. Thank you for asking.
And Benjamin?
Yeah, I will add some. Hello, everybody. As I said yesterday, for me, it's always important to, if I start a journey, like a healing journey, like a pathway from collective trauma to healing or forgiveness, the starting point, where am I really? And yesterday I said something about honesty, I believe, or where am I truly? And today I think about this collective trauma and collective trauma as a starting point. And I feel there's an insight there which will change also our relationship, our love relationships immediately. And that is this idea that my personal trauma is my personal trauma mainly. The pain that I feel inside, if I allow myself, is my pain. And yesterday I spoke about not making your love partner responsible for it. And then usually it ends up with your parents. I mean, if you believe in this life, then it ends up with your parents because they are the first ones responsible for doing something to you that didn't feel good. So whenever that comes up again, it is them. Or then you go on, you believe maybe in reincarnation, and you go on and say, yeah, it was another lifetime. And it was, maybe you meet somebody and you have this electric currency and you say, this was a lover or a murderer, whatever. It is still in the game of, I am traumatized. I received a wound, I was hurt, and the other is the one responsible for it. And in the understanding how much of the pain that I carry inside is actually a collective one, very much in the direction how Sabine just spoke, of being not just separated, but actually ripped out of our tribal home, ripped out of our indigenous cultures that were with the earth and with each other. And that's a trauma that we carry, that we all carry. We carry in ourselves. And if you, I don't ask you now to fully feel it, but if you tune in a little bit for the possibility that this is true, this is a wound we all carry, and then look at the normal relationship drama, that she says something which insults me, and it meets this collective layer that I'm part of hurt and wounding, and the wound, the fear, the hurt, the anger against it, the defense that then comes, I put on one love partner because she has hurt me. And if you feel that for a moment, then you see how absurd it is. And it does change something, because then I don't try to solve my trouble with one partner or my family or the close people, but I start to engage in a much larger story of healing. And for me, whenever I come to that space, it heals immediately. It actually makes forgiving almost a natural act. Because if I know that, for example, my parents, they maybe didn't give me the attention, not maybe, they didn't give me the attention that I needed. But I know that they come from a history of collective trauma where they also did not have what they needed. And this makes forgiving them almost an immediate, almost a natural mechanism. Because if I see that, I cannot blame them anymore. And now I don't mean to put everything on collective trauma, so it's not mine to solve. I mean, the part that I am part of this collective, and there is a responsibility to put my contribution in, to take the responsibility for my personal story to heal. But it still changes the perspective in a very fundamental way, and it moves us, in my understanding, towards maturity and being grown-ups dealing with the pain instead of children dealing with the pain.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel the depth already opening up in the space. And I would like now to invite our first question. And I also want to say that today, it might be that we don't answer as many questions as yesterday, but we want to experiment. Maybe it makes sense to have more questions, or maybe it makes sense to stay with one person for longer. We will see what guidance tells us. But we would like to invite the first question from Werner. Is he with us? And it's the question that you wrote on Sutra, I believe.
And I might support Ruth today. Sometimes it's Werner.
Thank you.
Werner Boxler.
Werner Boxler. Then
I hope he is.
I don't think he's with us. Okay. In that case, we would invite Jennifer. You wrote a question in the chat. Here's
Yeah, Werner Boxler is here.
Okay, Werner,
Okay.
please. And then we come next
Hi.
to you. Thank you.
So I'm talking about my question. Is that?
Yes, please ask your question.
Yeah. So I take my paper because I can better say it with the question I wrote to you. I'm primarily concerned with the collective female memory that has been linked to patriarchy for about 4,000 years. How can we take care of the relationship between women in order to achieve reconciliation between woman and man?
Wow. Yeah, this is a question we could open for now 24 hours. Yeah. For me, this is the main core reason why I am in this project. And for me, this is also the core wound I feel that I told yesterday I study theology, and noticing how much our history in religion is facing the male as the divine in heaven and facing the feminine as evil in a way. Eve who seduced Adam, and with this she was even more evil than the evil himself, and the snake and the pig and all this creation which is embodied became evil. And there I feel it's such a deep, deep, deep wound, even that now not so many people are anymore in church or religious. It influences our DNS, it influences our body system. And on this level, beyond our gender identification, to notice, I often have the picture that they took the goddess away from God, and this must be a lonely God. And with this lonely God, punishment came, misuse of power came. And so I feel that every living being, whether we are women or men or whatever identification we have, there are these two lines of two polarities in creation, which wants to find awareness. And for me, it was a very deep step to say with a certain self-love, I love to be a woman. And I love to be a sexual being. And I don't want to hide it anymore. This was a big step. I had, in a way, in the education, no role models, or nearly no. And there we also see how we imprisoned the divine powers, where suddenly the sexuality was only allowed in a very personal relationship. But I feel the divine power of Eros is so much more. It's our relation to body, to the body system. And the feminine, I would very much call a very closeness to the body system. And in the body system, there is consciousness. And so there, a deep healing work has to happen. And this we will discover in all kinds of relationships. And how do we build relationships which are faithful, which know about this? We all have this longing to stay together forever, yeah. And how can we do this without imprison ourselves? Because we trust that it's in our nature. And there I feel this is the basic for building community and for building trust. And of course, when I was young, the feminine movement were very powerful and the women were fighting the men. And it was this cut the penis away, something like this, yeah. And I noticed, wow, how can I be in such a movement? I love men, but I want to be a free being. And there we still are in what is sacred masculinity, what is sacred femininity, and what is sacred beyond all gender identification. There are so many different lines, but to find the real freedom in it, and then to find a free relationship, this is the work. For me, this is the core political work where we can learn to end war.
Thank you. And I wonder specifically, to go a bit deeper, you
Mm.
mentioned a moment ago about, you know, the feminists you met in your younger days who had all the rage against patriarchy. And I wonder if you can say something about this, especially as a woman, if you've met these points of rage in yourself, and then how have you worked with them?
Yeah, first I was very engaged in the women's movement, and then I noticed that it's strengthening separation between men and women. And I noticed that we as women are part of the history. How we don't go to the lines back now. How could it happen that matriarchal cultures, they were always described as so complete, but why could it happen that they were interrupted, or that their war or separation happened? And in this line, I discovered we are the mothers of the sons. We as women are the ones who give birth. And we were maybe the ones who were really longing for a partner. And by not having this kind of partner, starting to demand it. And so there is misuse of power on both sides, on the feminine side as well as on the masculine side. And to understand that there is a natural power which we don't dare to show. And instead of this, we misuse power, or we play a power with what is not our authentic own power. And this was or still is the work. And I feel that we can learn from indigenous cultures. Also, they were, of course, I think the whole globe is full of trauma, and we all have to work with the trauma. But we can find memories where we had a civilization where war was not existing, and where we could see that. I often feel there is a dream in nature wanting to prepare a culture of partnership. Yeah.
Thank you. You have some thoughts to add?
Wow. Yeah. Now thank you. And I assume that most of you are very engaged with that question when you enroll to this course, because it is so basic, as Sabine just said. And I would say a few words to Werner, just on my path as a man, which were important cornerstones or important orientations. And the first thing that when you asked that question that came to me was the memory when, I cannot say the full scope, but when I, for the first time, where the reality, the inner reality of patriarchy really hit me, where it was in Tamara, it was a lot of lectures about it, and it was actually around the, what is it called, the witches?
Witch hunt.
The witch hunt, yeah, but the one book.
Ah, the Hammer of the Witches.
The Hammer of the Witches. Anyway, Dieter Doom gave a lecture about the Hammer of the Witches, and he spoke very factfully as a historian how many women were killed following this book, that this book was the bestseller. It sold more than the Bible at that time in Europe. And again, I could cry talking about that, and that the explicit goal was to free humanity from all women. And I thought, like, suddenly it's totally absurd. You can also laugh, but something hit me inside more than 20 years ago, which shook me so deeply. And I felt how stacked up with guilt I am about my masculine embodiment, just being a man in this lifetime. It hit me. I cried. For it was in the school milieu. I cried for days. I was close to tears. And somehow when you ask me now, I feel as men, we have to have a moment of waking up to that reality. That is such an important orientation to know that. I don't even know whether at that time, maybe I was a witch at that time and got burned. So I'm not, it's not it's not a personal self-blame. But it is so shaking to see what one gender of humanity has done to another gender of humanity, and so bizarre that I feel you have to, and as a path of healing, you have to feel that. Yeah. And the second orientation I will put in, because it's again from that, it's very easy to fall into condemning all masculine behavior and criteria in yourself. And I already grew up in an alternative scene, so I didn't play soccer. I knitted. So so I came from a family that was like stereotypical, opposing that. And still, it is so easy then to fall into self-blame for everything that is a man about you. And of course, this doesn't help anybody either. And then it's actually terrifying to go into this very strict process with yourself of being a man. And then you see the women around you, liberated women, falling for the machos around you. And then you go like, what is going on? It's happening all the time. Like you're trying to be like, not one of these dominant. And then you see like, okay, what's going on erotically? So these are two cornerstones that were really important for me. Waking up to being part of a collective that did a lot of harm, and not falling for the guilt for it, to ignore who I am this lifetime. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, this was a lot already. Maybe we just take a breath for a moment before we have the next question. And I would like to next invite Jennifer to ask your question, if you're still with us.
Yes, thank you. I'm very grateful to Werner and for that question that it came first. I'm feeling very, very emotional and so strongly resonated for all the answers, and how the misuse of power by both genders. I see it in personal relationships and political, organizational, everywhere. I think it is a key issue, at least what I see. Thank you. So my question, I will read because I'm a bit emotional. I am curious and at the same time a little troubled by your words, Sabine, at the beginning of yesterday's session. Being private is taking something away from the whole. Can you say more about that? It seemed to me anyway that privately nurturing our individual uniqueness is at times very appropriate and not negative. And at the same time, there's so much confusion about that. So I'm also inspired by the point. And I think it relates also to some of the questions I saw around boundaries. It seems it might be. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I mentioned this because I don't know whether you are aware that the word is coming from the Roman language, privare, and this means to take away something from the whole. And this is the origin of the word private. And for me, it's a big difference between creating intimate spaces, and I think this is very, very important. And I could also say a truthful relationship is like a core, a role model for a community building process, this polarity and this playing together and this setting borders, but also being open. But the issue, for example, when I was very young in my first relationship, we faced a lot of problems in our loving each other very strongly. And suddenly we felt, wow, there is no community anymore around us. And we are so much together in this intimate togetherness that we don't feel this bigger space around us anymore. And it started to shift into an opposite. And then I noticed the fear of my partner, for example, at once when I wanted to open, he felt, wow, she wants to leave me. And I took this all very personal. I thought it's our problem. I thought I did not enough. I am not right as a woman, or he did mistakes. We took all of this on a personal level. And then I started to notice it's happening all around me the same. Everywhere the same problems. All of them close the doors. no one speaks publicly about relationship and about the truth in love. And then I noticed, growing a bit more older, I noticed how many lovers betray their husbands, or mainly it were husbands betraying the women, because they had this feeling we want to have more and were not able to share it at home. And there I noticed this is not a private problem. This is something where we learn something about love, what is not love. For example, I saw this film figures like this Taylor speaking on stage and saying, if he betrays me, I will kill him. And normally people think, yes, this is love. And there I noticed we made borders around our love relationships, which don't serve really the unfolding, because love is something very universal and very intimate. And when you speak about these personal questions, then I would say, yes, me as an individual being, I am a community enterprise. And I have to learn who am I in the whole. And by noticing the reflection, what I receive from others, I can start to learn much more about me than by closing the doors and don't wanting to know. And in this sense, I meant the word private is coming from taking aware something from the whole. Yeah, and I feel especially when we see in the last centuries how women took the role at home and the men had their profession in society. And if you look back to former societies, the women were the pole. They were the centers, and they were not only there for the lovers, they were there for the community. And there is a very different social design, what we started to touch yesterday. And I think there we can relearn. I always look more to the screen because I like to see you instead of the camera, but so I'm looking direct to you. Sorry, I forget always we should look to the camera. Yeah.
Thank you. Anything to add, Benjamin?
No.
That's good. Okay. Thank you for the question. Okay. So I would like to invite the next question from another German name, Verag,
Verag?
I believe, V-E-R-A-G. I don't know if it's a name.
Verag, yeah, but I don't know whether it's
maybe you can
German.
explain, and maybe when you can also say where you're from.
Yes.
And as well as how to pronounce your name
Helpful for
properly.
us.
Yeah. Are they here?
Yes, hello.
Hey.
Can you hear me?
Ah, yes. Hello. Is it your real
I'm in
name?
Switzerland, and my name is Vera. Exactly. Hello. Yeah, it's Vera, and my family name is Gauci. So that's where the G
so
is
Vera
coming.
G.
Vera G.
That's
right.
Vera. Yeah.
Thank you.
I know
Yeah,
that name.
Yuval,
Mhm.
could you come and move our chat window so we can see her speaking to us? Thank
I
you.
think if they put the hand, then they are always up
You can
there.
just make it small. We just want to see your face.
Well, so I ask you to share your understanding on where did we as humanity and why did we lose this trust-based coexistence? Like, for me, it's so hard to understand. Like we talking so much about domination, patriarchy, and control, fear, everything. But like, where did it start? I think there was a peaceful coexistence at some point somehow on Earth, and it's very hard to understand that and accept that it didn't happen until now, like that we could get rid of it, like until we're still so much oppressed by this dominating narratives, or yeah. So yeah, I would just love to hear from you your understanding on how, why, yeah, and where did it start? Maybe before you mentioned the godness was taken away, but like who took it away?
It's fun.
Thank you.
Is that? Okay, no, that is the question, Vera, that's always tempting to me to go into a philosophy seminar, not because it is so abstract. When I look for healing, I myself go exactly to that question. How could that happen? And how can we repair or fix the beginning, understand the beginning? And some of it is history, yes, that's like the matriarchal cultures. And for me, they're the most important thing actually to say right now is that in common consciousness, for me, the point that we speak of 5,000 years of history, or we speak of 10,000 years of history, we speak about the Neolithic revolution. And before that, we were pretty much not human. I mean, it was just, I mean, this is where history starts. Everything before is prehistory. So for me, there's already a sense of separation in history, starting at that point, which gives me a very wrong understanding of my origin. Because if I go into my common understanding, we had hundreds and thousands of years as human beings on this planet living in this peaceful coexistence. So there's a very, very dominant and wrong perception of that. But that doesn't help me any further with the question, how could it start? And actually, the closest I come to it is in embodiment. It is when I am in spiritual experiences out of my body and I feel the freedom, and then I come back to my body. There is something where I feel that being incarnated is a pathway of learning to deal with less freedom, I say, in favor of sensuality. Now I try to make it, that's from real experience of mine. When I come into my body, I feel less able to move freely everywhere I want, but I feel the senses. I feel sensuality, I feel being of earth, which is, I believe, the learning path of us as humans on earth. And that makes it even more interesting that there's so much trauma and shame around sexuality, because in a way that's the most concentrated experience of sensuality, and actually the moment when it goes very well, where it transcends the physical. In sexual joy or even ecstasy and bliss is a moment where I'm fully in my body and almost explode out of it, leave the borders or the limitations of it again. So I somehow feel that incarnation is a big part of that already. Yeah, that was my philosophical start with it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Sabine.
Yeah, you are touching my favorite issue, and I think I won't summarize it in some words now, but I wrote 2 books. The one is about, it's called Dreaming Stones, Perspectives of Culture, where we were in resonance with body and spirit. And the next one is called Temple of Love. And if you look back to the goddesses, for example, in former times, where you see Maria or Lilith or this figure that are already a bit patriarchalized figures, but you see that their sensual and sexual being and loving were united. And then something happened where the body system were driven out more, and there was the sacred Maria until today in the church, or also in other religions. It's something similar. And when I try to figure out why could this happen, then I feel that in the center there happened something in the leaving the balance on the sexual level and the spiritual level. And I feel I described a story where I described it in a very personal story, where there was a longing which was so powerful, and it was like we were not mature enough to fulfill the longing in the way how it is. There is unity and polarity here on this planet. And there I felt that there was something where, like a cultural revolution, where human beings said, we don't want to always listen to the goddesses or to the earth or to the body system. We are free, we have power. And suddenly human being discovered that we can have power and of domination. And I think before this did not exist. Everybody knew I am part of the whole. I am a universal being. And then suddenly it started that the human being said, we can be the divine, we can conquer the world, we can build empires. And I think in the core there was the sexual unsolved issue, which is where maybe now we are mature enough to understand and to recognize from all what happened to us to heal the wounds. And to say it very simple, I feel that in the matriarchal culture, the women were in the center, and we have many, many feminine figures. The oldest one, I think, is the Venus of Hohlefels, full of body. And the men were around. They were like admiring the feminine part, and the women had the longing for something on the side, like a partner, same power. They did not want always to be the mothers in a simple way. And by this, the man felt we have to be stronger than we already feel. And then they felt, wow, they are longing for the protector, for the warrior, and so on. And there I feel something happened, like yes, it was, I can't say mistake. It's in evolution, and I think evolution will solve it by recognizing our truth, our reality. And there we are in. If you look to the culture of Creta, for example, there they were very much about trying to figure out what is the culture of partnership. And there Europe as a continent has its origin. And it happened that Zeus, the god, seduced the goddess and took her away from Tyros, I think. And then this was the foundation of Europe. And so you can study in the mythology what happened in the balance. And now we have to heal wounds.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your answer.
Yeah, wow. Now I would love to start on a full seminar of mythology. But rather than doing that, we would actually now invite you to have 15 minutes together in breakout rooms, and we would give you a choice. You can either just use the space amongst yourselves to reflect about what you've heard, to digest it, or if you would like a prompt, we have one for you, which Uri will also send into the chat and also into the rooms. And the question we prepared is, do you remember a time in your life when you've forgiven someone for something? And what skills or qualities did you have to use? So, you'll find yourself in a group of 3, you'll have 15 minutes, and then we'll come back together. And thank you for all the questions we've already received. We have enough to continue for the rest of the webinar, so we won't be able to take any more. But thank you for your engagement and your curiosity so far. So we say bye for now and see you again in 15 minutes. some more to come. So we'll just wait a minute for everybody to join us.
And you while we have a frame again.
Das ist die von Rubicon.
Oh, wer ist denn das?
Okay, are we all back yet, Uri? We still have a few coming.
8 seconds.
Okay, we give it a few more seconds. Okay, so welcome back, everybody. Wow, you all look very thoughtful, the ones I can see. So before we move on, I would invite all of you to get up, have a walk around the room and stretch your bodies in a way that feels good for you. Great. And whenever you feel ready, you can come back. Great. And just to land once sitting down, one of my favorite exercises is just to spend a minute rubbing your belly in a circular way. It's very simple, but it really relaxes your nervous system. It works for me anyway. Maybe it doesn't work for everybody.
Childhood memory.
Pregnant.
Good. Thank you. I hope you feel some relaxation. Okay, and I'm curious how the breakout rooms were for you. Can I just see with your thumbs? Was it good? Was it bad? Great. Looks good. From what I see here, looks good. Thank you. Okay, and then we would continue with our very abundant lineup of questions. We won't get through them all, but I would like to start again with the question from Gabrielle. Are you with us, Gabrielle?
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Gabriella, perhaps.
Gabrielle is fine. Yeah.
And where are you?
I am in Nova Scotia in Canada.
Great.
Now I have to find my question.
Somewhere back in the chat, I think.
Yes. I guess my question was like, first of all, I was like really, I'm just reading it from Sutra now. Yeah, I was really amazed when I read the title for the second webinar, because like collective trauma is such an immense topic. And I was wondering, like for us to recognize how collective trauma is influencing us, how can we support each other in like creating spaces to actually do that and come from our like individual pain to the recognition of like there's collective generational trauma active. And also I'm just gonna read it. So it was like, how can we create spaces that can allow for the recognition that the potential for violence and even cruelty we possibly, in brackets, all carry as humans. How can that be touched in a way that does not re-traumatize, but allow us to heal and learn? And how in Tamara specifically, or among us in general, can we support each other in recognizing that individual pain is in many ways connected to the traumas we or our ancestors have experienced or inflicted upon each other as a collective?
Okay.
Actually, two. You can choose.
Yeah, that's
You can
more than
choose.
one question. How do I do justice to this abundant question now? Now, I will start with, I spoke about it before, that's almost the frame which I feel is the strength of Tamara. Right now, we are also in Tamara in a lot of process and discussion of like, how do we create trauma-informed and safe spaces so that not re-traumatization happens when you touch the points. So, but I would start with the framing. And for me, the framing that I started with, the recognition that much more of what I interpret and analyze as personal trauma, and therefore it serves me to separate more from the others because it's my trauma. That is, like, in my understanding and my experience, one of the biggest steps to change that narrative, actually. And I'm sure, maybe not, but there's this fact that energy goes where attention goes. So if you invite a circle, just with that question, can we understand and can we feel embedded and part not of our own biography only, but of the collective trauma of systems of domination? Then you can almost choose. But I say patriarchy now. And in my experience, if I put the question like that, people will touch trauma points. It will actually, if you, not in half an hour, but if you give a seminar like of 3 days to that issue, people will touch very personal, their very personal aspects of the collective trauma and still feel embedded. It's almost like a little bit magic when you say like, okay, this is your trauma, this is your trauma, and this is your trauma. People, just through the question, separation is strengthened in the room. Whereas if we succeed in putting up the frame, as we are exchanging now our personal participation of the collective trauma, you touch these points, I touch these points, and feel embedded in a group that is oriented towards healing. And as in my analysis, you can get different frames, and then, but if I put it very general, the wound of separation is one way to say this is where it all has its root. And then you can come with tribe and genders and races and everything, but it's a sense of separation. It's a sense of separation from the rest of me and me, pretty much. So whenever you create a setting that does not strengthen that separation, but says the healing of that wound is our issue together, part of the healing is already in the space. Yeah, that's a starting point. And then you gave a lot more. And with, I would say one more thing about re-traumatization. And I know it's a little bit, again, a little bit of a harsh thing. Also, again, in Tamara, it finds quite a bit of discussion that when I came to Tamara and discovered the wound in myself, I say, or explored it, there were situations where people put their finger on it. And sometimes even with mirroring me about how I acted or how I spoke, it felt actually more like putting salt onto it than a finger on it. And I came into this mindset of like, wait a second, this is re-traumatizing me. And I feel that it needs a lot of caution and a lot of gentleness and a lot of solidarity. And still, I'm very careful with this issue of re-traumatization. It can be, I am doing better with the frame that I get activated in my trauma. Because, for example, in Tamara, most grounds are safe. And most moments when I felt like, okay, no, this is traumatizing me, it was pushing it away and blaming the other. And for me, that never helped. Yeah, it's a challenge to many places where, but I'm also somebody, I grew from very challenging mirrors. Yeah, like Dieter Doom, he has a lot of human knowledge and he's very sharp sometimes. And I received some quite strong critical mirrors. And I can say, yeah, some of them were maybe too much, but they were my most important learning points. Yeah, so that's like my flavor.
Thank you. You would like to add, Sabine?
I don't know whether we all should answer both, but I feel this is also a very important point, yeah, because when we started the project, in the first beginning, we had a lot of space in building community spaces, where then if the trauma is touched, I remember moments when I was crying a whole day or even longer, and it was so helpful to be in a protected space and to allow it without that people comfort me too quick. So it needs the space. And we are now in a shifting moment because the community grew. And then we see that sometimes personal accompaniment is really important. In former times, we said, we do what others do with personal therapists. We do it as a community. Now I could not say it in this way anymore because it's a shifting taking place. And one must look very fine what is really fitting to whom. But I feel for me, the main work was to recognize that behind every trauma, there is something healthy, and to always relate to this and always to check if I'm, for example, criticizing a person, is it coming really from this healing impact or is it coming from a real competition impact, and to make the difference. And for me, I feel I did not meet any person yet who I would say he or she solved her trauma fully, but to be more aware, what is the steering energy? Am I in trust or am I in my trauma point? And always when this reaction comes on very strong, then I know, this is the trauma point, which is activated. And then to support myself or the ones with who I'm together, that we don't identify with this. And by this, the witness can be there and see. And this for me is, sometimes it was helpful to really be identified so strong with my own trauma that suddenly the recognizing point came, like by the universal energies which were stronger than this. But I would never, ever say something general about it. It's more this fine line to see how we can act in this moment the best. And I also have to say the community itself, when we founded the community, we went to a common trauma. So there is a common trauma. And I can say to go through this process helped me the most to understand what real peace work means. So this was evolution helped us to recognize the humane stuff. Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I
Please,
go one more?
Go for it.
Now, from what Sabine said, I somehow assume that you're also looking for ways, not living in community, or some of you living in community, not having the kind of setting we talk about, and still looking for ways how to engage in a healing way. So in a way, how Sabine just spoke now, I thought again, this frame of we are all participating in healing a collective trauma can also change a group and bring forth an agreement where you say, good, we look at things, do inner work, and whoever is triggered just shows, and somebody who's not triggered in that moment takes the facilitation and the lead. It's a very simple thing to say, not so easy to do. And that is something, a very basic rule or orientation we have in Tamara when we have forum. If the forum leader, he or herself, is triggered, to just say, okay, it's not me right now. I am triggered because this you can see in a group adding up. It's like an iterative process. It speeds up so quickly. If the person in charge and like facilitating a healing situation, a potential healing situation, is triggered and does not admit it, it goes off everywhere in the room. Yeah, for me, that's also a really important guideline, how to create safe spaces.
Thank you. And since now we've come to the really into the question of what is trauma, I would invite actually 2 questions to be spoken one after the other, because they're quite similar, but I think they add to one another. So I would invite Jewel to speak your question, and then Thomas, and then we see how they weave together.
Hello.
Hi.
I wasn't sure if it's me. The pronunciation would be Jule, and I'm from the south of Germany. And my question was basically about the healing process, and in order to heal the collective trauma, if it needs to be an individual process. And then by the individual process, the collective will be healed eventually, or that if that's like the idea in practical terms. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I would invite Thomas to add your question as well.
Thomas is Thomas? Maybe?
Who knows?
Who knows?
Everyone has surprising names today.
Okay, hello.
Hi.
My name is Thomas. My question was, what is collective trauma and what is personal trauma? How can I tell them apart, and does it matter?
Thank you.
Yeah, 2 very not so similar questions, but I try to find the line. And by hearing the questions at once, I have a memory what came up, and maybe I start with this. We were on a pilgrimage, and we were presenting a theater which was called We Refuse to Be Enemies. And it was a pilgrimage through Israel, from the north of Israel, and then we entered the West Bank and we spoke to Palestinians with the same theater. And it was bringing very personal stories, what people faced in their lifetime, and it also had the collective part in it. And people were often deeply, deeply touched. The theater was developed by facing a reconciliation camp here in Tamara and listening to the stories of special people who wanted to commit suicide or who were officers and so on. And I still remember the moment when we were performing and people were touched, the tears flow. And then a Palestinian person stood on stage and he suddenly said, and you are the guilty ones. You are the German ones. You caused the whole things. And in the first moment, I reacted with trauma. I reacted with shock, knowing that I myself was never a soldier or whatever, but it was this collective German, the evil. And then I was in a way touched, but not identified. And I went on stage and I said, yes, I know if I could, I would ask for forgiveness for all my people. And in this moment, an opening happened between this person and me, and we embraced each other and tears were flowing. And I mentioned this as a story because it was a collective trauma and it was also a very personal story in it. And I think all of our stories, of our personal stories, are connected with the collective trauma. And so both of them needs that we face them and that we look to them, and from there the healing energy can appear. This is the first what comes up to me. Yeah. Maybe you want to add? Yeah.
Beautiful. I remember when you speak about it, I remember the scene, which was a theater in Nazareth. And maybe I take that for Jule, for your question. I actually take that example because there I was an observer. I wasn't attacked myself. Actually, I was. I was part of the theater group, so we were attacked with this man. And your question was, for healing collective trauma, do we all do individual? Do we need to heal our individual trauma and then add up to healing the collective trauma by individuals being healed? And part of it, I feel, needs a lot of individual healing journey for the maturity to face collective trauma. I take that example. You're on stage, you are actually addressing a collective trauma. In that moment, we were actually addressing the Israelis and the Palestinians, so we were not even addressing ourselves as German. And then this man jumps up and screams at us. And then part of it is a collective trauma, like being German, being on stage there. But in the moment when a man jumps up and shouts at you, that has not much to do with the collective trauma. For most of us, this is our dad shouting. Or this is like some other abusive male figure in our early childhood. And so it needs quite some maturity, like in this case, Sabine, and then actually the whole theater group stepped forward by and by, because she had this courage or the maturity to separate the personal trauma of like, okay, she's getting attacked and therefore she reacts with defense and or freeze. She had the possibility to actually say, yes, wow, this is true. As a collective, as part of a collective, I take responsibility and I actually say sorry. But to address that level of collective trauma and act in a healing way, in an acupuncture point, in an acupuncture action, I would say, needs a lot of maturity. It needs a good part of personal healing already to come to that level, to address it then on that level. That's one point. And the second thing is my understanding, that's like, it gets a little bit more theoretical, maybe. There is this image of like, okay, we are a humanity of 7 billion people, or 8 soon, and they are all traumatized. And to heal the whole, every little aspect has to heal. That means every individual has to heal their trauma, which doesn't give me a lot of immediate faith, I must admit. And there's another understanding of systems, actually, where how systems heal. And that is not by healing each ingredient. There is a way to look into dynamic, nonlinear systems where there's not even a critical mass, as we used to think, but a relevant number of people, of individual components of a system being healed, have an effect onto the whole system. And I must admit, this is the image I work with innerly if I believe in the healing of humanity. And I'm not talking about now a very small elite which does the healing. And actually, I do talk about it, but not from a dominant place at all. But somewhere in the world, people will need to start to break that chain of fear and violence. And when the first group of people do that, and it's not individual healing because it's healing between each other. I am afraid of myself maybe, but I'm really afraid of you. And so there needs to be healing between people. And if the first group of people actually comes to profound level of trust in the places where there's always fear, habitual fear, historical fear, generational fear. We all named that already. And they come to peace and healing with that, it will have an effect to the whole body of humanity. Yeah, I deeply believe that. And there are moments when I know it. Yeah.
Thank you. And I just wonder, have we given enough of an answer to this question of, does it actually matter, the differentiation between personal and collective?
Maybe I just to once to add, I feel that every person is a microscope of the whole. And so we all have our very special experiences, our very special traumas, but by the readiness to face our personal trauma, we always face the whole. And by really daring this step, we are part of healing. In a way, it's the picture of an acupuncture point. And the more some individuals, or even better, some groups have this collective healing, it will have an impact to the whole. This for me is also, I deeply believe this. All my political work is influenced by this belief, I would say. And we are just coming back from a very important journey where we visited people living in a favela in Brazil under really, really heavy circumstances. And since 8 years, they come once a year to Tamara and we work together. And by them knowing of their personal trauma, really intimate, and going together as a group and working as a group, they have such a courage and daring to act in their surrounding that one can see that the violence in the whole favela was reduced. And this is a way, because they always transform the point where they react with fear or with anger into a kind of knowing themselves, and by this knowing the point of others and how they can open the key towards healing. And this is for me the work with the collective trauma and the personal trauma, both. It's we cannot separate it from each other, I feel.
Thank you.
And it's the difference whether I'm the daughter of someone who was officer and killed thousands of people in a concentration camp, or whether I am a victim since thousands of years where my people were always tortured and persecuted. So it's a difference. And nevertheless, the trauma is deep in all of us. Yeah.
Thank you. So what I hear from you now is the personal trauma being somehow an intimate access point.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. Did you also want to add something more?
Yes.
Go for it, yeah.
For me, it's really the way that you ask, it's almost my line of passion, I would say. I think it makes a huge difference in what interpretation we give it or what narrative we live in. Because, like, I make it, again, maybe a little bit provocative, but if my access is only my personal trauma, I enter a personal healing journey, which I believe in the end will lead you to the understanding that I'm part of the larger whole. Yes, but meanwhile, if I focus on personal healing, let's say I am totally good with the idea that we create healing centers for the privileged people who can afford a personal healing journey. Now, maybe to the US participants, I take Costa Rica and I create a gated community in Costa Rica for my own personal healing with very healthy, wholesome food, yoga every morning, and the sound of birds through the speakers at the poolside. And I create my personal, sorry, now I exaggerated, but as a societal development, I don't exaggerate. So, and now if you see that, and if you see what's going on politically in Central America, then you know that this healing does not work. And it's actually a continuous an isolation of myself as an individual, which is the wound. So I think it makes a huge difference whether we access it through serving the larger healing or through serving our whole. And again, I say we come to points where we need to take care. Somebody said that in the beginning, private spaces for nourishing our uniqueness. We come to places where we cannot go on because of personal trauma. And still it makes a difference whether I say I take care of that because I want to serve a larger healing, or whether I take care of it so that I have a good life. And as a humanity, we are in a catastrophe with this separation politically. Good.
Thank you very much. Wow, it's a lot. So I would still love it if we can go through 2 more questions in the next 10 minutes, but let's see. So I would invite Patrick for the next question.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I'm Patrick from Brazil.
Wow.
Okay. Yes. Let me find my question. So,
let me say
I've
something. Just something very short, very briefly. We both said, wow, this is not because Brazil is so much better than the rest of the world, but we both came back from a very intense journey a week ago. So, wow, Patrick from Brazil, just so you don't get a misconception of like, good.
Thank you. So, I've heard about the aspect of understanding how much pain men did to women historically. And I wanted to know more about other ways you were engaging with holding space for men to heal, with questions of men's healing, self-esteem, this complex of inferiority about all this pain that was done. Yes, I want to hear about other experiments, other levels of engaging individually, in groups, between men. What have you been doing?
So maybe I take it very directly. Yesterday after the webinar, I went to a ceremony in Tamera, a man's circle as a place that we dedicated to healing the masculine, healing toxic patriarchy, I could say, healing the masculine. And for me, it was such a nourishing space, and it was very simple. One man in the community is having an operation. I will not go into his details now, but he invited for his personal healing path, individual healing path. He said, I want to be held by man in this step. He wanted a ceremony to that man marks his threshold. It's something, it's an operation that has to do with him as a man. So this is why it was specific to be held by man. And it was very simple. We had a fire. He told his story, and we were giving our blessings, and something felt so right and so good about it. And I think it was a very small group. It was 10 men. And I mean, the fact that men come together to share on that level and to behold in a healing path instead of brothers in arms. I mean, just that in itself is something so new. It's almost like our 5,000 years of conditioning get a rewiring, because we sit together to support each other on a healing path. And yeah, I take that as a very simple example. We'll not go into the content, but the frame of it was that we all felt nourished afterwards. And the closing of the ceremony was that we also all touched, which is yet again for men to not go, oh, buddy, no, like in a, oh, now you don't see that in the camera, but I just took Sabine and you're going to kind of like, hey, man, in a certain male way. But we touched in a very gentle way. We touched in a perceiving way, and he received our touch. And I must say, these moments are healing. And when I go to the healing between men and women, which is a very primordial wound, because this is where we come from, men and women coming together, is like, but when to come to that, we need so much healing among men. We need so much healing among women. But for men, I can really say it, that level of seeing each other, will the next time when I'm together in the circle with this man, and there is some moment where I could fall into the ingrained pattern of competition with other men, there will be this moment. There will be this intimate moment sitting at night at a fire and sharing one of the circle's healing paths. Yeah.
Thank you also for the personal story, the insight into what actually happens. It's good to have an image. Did you want to add something?
Just to maybe to add from our feminine side, that for us it's a deep, deep step to find solidarity between women, and especially to let the man really know what we love and what we don't love. Because what if a man doesn't know, and there is, for example, this erotic attraction, and then he wants to come closer, and the feminine often seduces a lot, and then he comes closer and then they say no. And it's so important to reveal the deeper level. And for me, this is the work in solidarity to the male aspect, that we dare to really reveal our longing, our feminine side in solidarity and compassion towards the man. And here I feel there was so much lie, there was so much not spoken, there is so much hidden. And if this is revealed in a new culture, it's a healing step. I would say a culture without war needs love schools. Yeah, where a man can become a man and a woman can become a woman, or you find your identification where you are looking for. Yeah. And also maybe to say that in the beginning, we shared a lot in the community our sexual fantasies. And often we don't come really in contact because we hide our fantasies. And by revealing them without fear, suddenly one can understand more what is really contact, what is a real approach. And often this fantasies disappear after you dared to share, and after then real contact is possible. And this is a deep learning. Yeah.
Thank you. So I would invite our final question for this evening, which would be from Clara. Clara's not with us anymore. Uri's giving me signs.
Now it's the time to give our question.
I don't understand.
No more question, he says.
I still think we could have one more question. We have a team disagreement. That's how we deal with conflict. I think it's a nice question to end on, and then
we
still like to get some
short.
voices.
Yeah.
Yes. So Clara, we still invite you.
So maybe she's not
Perhaps
there,
it's
then
guidance.
this is also an answer.
Okay.
This is how we solve conflicts. Wow.
But anyway, just to share the question, because I liked it so much, it was, is there hope, really? And what makes you believe it's possible to create a world without conflict and war? It's so easy to be triggered and traumatized, but where do we find hope? So I don't know now if we want to go into answer, but
I could not live without hope. And there is this one sentence: what would you do if you would know tomorrow the world would explore or would not exist anymore? You would plant a tree. And for me, I feel that we will face a lot of pain, a lot of war. It's not like just that we can end it. And by daring to face with compassion what is happening on this globe, the hope is nourished. And it's a book of Ernst Bloch, The Principle of Hope. And I could not live without this hope. And so I nourish my hope day by day. Yeah.
Thank you. Good. Beautiful. Okay. So this was our time, more or less, for today. And to close, we would love to invite a few voices to hear how this time has been for you. Maybe it's to share an insight, maybe it's to share a friction point, maybe it's something else, but we don't want any more questions right now, really just reflections. So whoever has the impulse, you can unmute your microphone and speak.
I don't know, can you hear me or no? I can't
Yes,
hear
I
you.
can hear you.
So first of all, hello, Benjamin and Sabine. Michael here. I just want to say that I'm loving this. And today was, I suddenly realized today was softer, maybe partly because of the questions and also because of getting more sort of used to this. But the softness is something that's really valuable given the hardness of what you might call war or whatever it is that we're dealing with. And for men especially, you know, there's a risk to that, but that's kind of just a concept, I think. But nevertheless, that's what I wanted to say. The softness of today was appealing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great. And is there another voice?
Yeah, I just wanted, sorry. I just wanted to say that I was really struck today also by the depth of, we had the sharing in the breakout room and just this question of what is individual and what is collective. I'm reflecting a lot about the question of ancestry and just realizing how profoundly embedded you know, well, the construct of patriarchy and the suppression of the feminine are in just about every single trauma, and how these traumas get passed down in those dyads of families and happen in isolation. And when you ask the question, you know, what skill did you have, did you use in a process where you forgave somebody? For me, it's a process where I have forgiven, but I can't facilitate the healing with my own parents, who I've been estranged from for a quarter century now, because there isn't the societal holding around it. And so I sort of know that without support, certain processes are very, very difficult. And so I want to thank you for the work that you do, because I realize that for me, this question of peace and how peace relates to hope and how it's the ultimate liberator, but also the liberator in the sense that for me, there's an understanding that all these forces that make us inflict traumas are not personal. Ultimately, they're transpersonal. And so, yeah, I'm really grateful for this space and for the depth that you open by addressing core things that for me are so deeply connected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Forrest.
I wanted to.
Sorry, I think before there was somebody else trying to speak at the same time.
Yeah, it was me. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for your work this evening. I have a curiosity, really. It's a question to myself, but also to you, which is around how helpful our labeling of our gender and what is masculine and feminine. Really, this is a sort of a binary opposition, which keeps us in just two places, you know, and I'm learning more about Indigenous cultures that have, you know, 13 genders and so on. So I just wonder if another form of vocabulary and dialogue around the incredible diversity, biodiversity, the diversity in our humanness may help us.
Thank you very much, Abs, for bringing this perspective in.
I wanted to, wait, can we? Oh,
we can hear you, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I don't know why I'm not showing up, but that's okay. I really resonated with everything that you guys shared today and yesterday. And yeah, the breakout rooms, I feel like it's so profound when you get to connect with other people in this community and you know, talk and share. I think it's one of the most healing parts of this course, is to connect with other like-minded people who share a common interest, like you guys mentioned yesterday. And yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for what you guys are doing. I'm 19 years old and I'm really, really inspired by all of you. You guys shine so brightly, and yeah, looking forward to maybe meeting you guys in person.
Thank you so much. Really great to hear these voices. Thank you also for bringing your experience in the breakout rooms back. It's good to hear. And this with each other. I see you. I see you. I just wanted to add that also in our online platform, Sutra, you do have the possibility to chat, to create groups in the time between the weekends. You can continue exchanging with each other. So yeah, please use this opportunity. And I would just invite the very last reflection.
Yes.
Now. Yes, I see you.
What I really liked about it, that when you tell about your personal putting the theory in practice, how you put your theory in practice, and that what you were telling about sharing the men's circle and about the women's circle and the forum, then it comes to life for me. And in the other way, it stays more like theory. So yeah, thank you. So it makes it for me more alive. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good. Okay. And to finish, we would like to offer you another chance to give us feedback. So we prepared another poll for you, which I would invite Uri to launch now. And you can see, I will read it, but you should be able to see it on your screen. So the first is, how was the webinar for you? Again, 1 is terrible, 5 is fantastic. And which format do you prefer? Do you like hearing more questions from more people, or having more time for dialogue and exchange between the speakers and people who ask questions? See the results coming in on our screen. It's very exciting. We only see the first one, we don't see the second. But in the first one, we can see a very positive response. Thank you. Nobody found it terrible. That's great. Improvement on yesterday.
Or the person didn't comment.
For the second option.
Okay, 60% for the second option. So a little bit more prefer a slower, deeper dialogue. Let's see how we go with that tomorrow. And still, a lot of people also like more questions from more people. So let's see. And yeah, I want to say thank you for your engagement this evening, for choosing to be with us on a Saturday evening for us. For some of you, maybe it's still the morning, but yeah, thank you very much for taking time in your weekend to dive into these deep issues. Thank you, Benjamin. Thank you, Babette.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Uri. Thank you, Javal.
Yes, thank you very
and
much.
thank you to all of you.
Just to say goodbye, we'd invite you to write one word in the chat. How are you? How are you now? How are you feeling? Together, grateful, triggered, opened, hope, curious, nourished, uplifted. Wow, melancholy, mind baffled, flying.
Connected.
Really, really a whole spectrum. Thank you for everything that you are feeling and experiencing.
Wow. Connected is
good.
Connected as a majority.
Embodied even. Thank you very much. Okay, and so we say goodbye until tomorrow. We invite you again to write your questions for tomorrow into Sutra, praying that the technology gods support us. And for now, we say goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.